Yi was behind the wheel of our rented sedan, heading towards a forest resort in Colorado. My wife Carol was dozing off next to me, while her mother Diana sat in the back seat, engrossed in a book. It was Carol's idea, to have a family getaway in the heart of nature to strengthen our relationship. Lately, Carol and I had been arguing over trifles, and the atmosphere at home was tense. "Tom, could you drive more carefully? Your sharp maneuvers are making me queasy," Carol grumbled, waking up. "Sorry, honey, I just want to get there faster," I replied in a conciliatory tone, trying to hide my annoyance. "She's never satisfied with anything." "Oh, youth, always in a rush," Diana chimed in from the back seat. "In our day, we never hurried and just enjoyed the views from the window." I rolled my eyes but stayed silent. I was always slightly irritated by my mother-in-law's presence with her endless moralizing. But there was no way around it. Diana had been widowed a few years ago, and Carol considered it her duty to take care of her mother. A couple of hours later, we finally arrived at the forest resort and settled into a cozy wooden cottage. It was a picturesque place. Mountains covered in lush greenery, a babbling brook nearby, fresh air saturated with the scent of pine. Even my city soul noted the soothing beauty of nature. "So, how about a little walk before dinner?" Carol suggested, enthusiastically unpacking. "The brochure says there's a lovely forest trail leading to a scenic lake." "Maybe we should rest from the road first," I tried to wriggle out. After hours of sitting behind the wheel, the prospect of a horizontal position on the bed was more appealing to me. "Oh no, no more lazing around for you!" Carol playfully slapped my shoulder. "Come on, get up! Mom, you're coming with us too, right?" "Of course, darling," Diana readily agreed. "I can't wait to breathe in this wonderful forest air." I had to comply. After all, this was exactly what we came here for, to be together, to reconnect. Half an hour later, we were already walking along a winding path, meandering between age-old pines and spruces. The murmur of the forest stream and the chirping of birds had a calming effect, and I felt the tension of recent weeks gradually receding. Maybe Carol was right, and this was exactly what we needed right now. We had been walking the trail for about an hour, but the lake mentioned in the brochure still hadn't appeared. The sun was gradually sinking towards the horizon, casting long shadows on the green moss. I began to worry. Wandering through an unfamiliar forest in the dark was not appealing. "Maybe we should head back?" I suggested, checking the map. "I think we took a wrong turn somewhere. That lake is nowhere to be seen." "Oh no, we've come this far. We have to reach it," Carol stubbornly objected. "It's bound to show up soon." "I'm afraid Tom is right," Diana said sensibly, adjusting her hat. "The sun is setting, and we've already strayed quite a bit from the path. Better not risk it. See, listen to your mom. She won't steer you wrong." I rejoiced at the support. Carol grimaced but didn't argue. We turned around and headed back the way we came. Only the acclaimed lake still wasn't appearing. And wasn't appearing. Gradually, I began to realize the frightening truth. We seemed to be lost. Around us was nothing but forest, with no hint of the familiar trail. "I think we're going in circles," Diana voiced the common thought, wearily sitting down on a fallen log. "We should have turned back right away, as Tom said." "Well, sorry, the idea sounded so enticing." Carol threw up her hands and turned to me. "Honey, you're better at navigating terrain. Can you find the way?" I twirled the useless map in my hands with doubt. That same brook was gurgling somewhere to the right, and I figured that if we followed it, at least we'd come out somewhere. But Diana could barely move her feet, and there was no more than half an hour left before darkness fell. "Let's rest for now," I suggested, sitting down next to my mother-in-law. "And in the morning we'll look for the road with fresh strength. I don't think we've gone that far." "Spend the night in the woods! Are you crazy?" Carol exploded. "We'll be devoured by wild animals here, or maniacs," I sighed. City life really does not have the best effect on one's sanity. In a calm tone, I explained that we were unlikely to be threatened by maniacs in the middle of a dense forest, and we could escape animals by climbing a tree. Diana listened silently to our argument, and then suddenly said with a bitter smirk, "Your father and I used to love wandering in the woods too, Carol. Ah, youth. It seemed the whole world was at our feet." "Really?" The daughter was surprised. "You never told me about that, Mom." "I guess I was keeping those memories to myself," Diana replied with a a sad smile. To warm myself with their glow in moments of loneliness. I was suddenly pricked by a strange feeling. I never thought that my mother-in-law, always so strict and proper, also had her secrets, her cherished moments. Maybe she's not as much of a grumbler as she wants to appear? This thought made me look at Diana with new eyes. Meanwhile, it had gotten completely dark. Carol climbed onto the lower branch of the nearest spruce, grumbling that a serious conversation awaited us in the morning. Diana and I settled at the foot of the tree, making a kind of bed out of spruce needles. My stomach rumbled with hunger, but there was nothing to be done. We could only wait for dawn and hope that this misunderstanding would soon be over. The night turned out to be cool. We lay side by side, wrapped in our jackets, trying to preserve the remnants of warmth. Carol was softly snoring somewhere above, and I couldn't fall asleep, going over the events of this ill-fated day in my head. And to think we had to get lost. "Can't sleep?" Diana suddenly asked quietly, turning to me. "Yeah, so many thoughts in my head," I sighed, "thinking about how we're going to get out of here." "We'll get out, we have no choice," she said calmly. "We just need to be patient." I couldn't help but smile. That's truly wisdom that comes with age. In youth, any problem seems like a catastrophe. Diana must have sensed my mood and continued, "You know, Tom, I feel like you and Carol have drifted too far apart lately." "What do you mean?" I was surprised by this turn. "I see how you interact. No warmth, just reproaches and arguments. Is that how loving people should live?" I pondered. In some ways, Diana was right. Carol and I had indeed become strangers, mired in routine and household squabbles. Where had that spark gone, that attraction that had once brought us together? "So what do I do?" I asked quietly, looking up at the dark sky. "How do I bring back the old feelings?" "You need to learn to hear each other, to compromise, sometimes to put your partner's interests before your own. But most importantly, never forget what made you fall in love with each other." These words suddenly made my heart ache. Turning to Diana, I saw her face illuminated by the moonlight. It was so wise, so understanding, and unexpectedly beautiful. I was suddenly overwhelmed by a wave of tenderness for this woman. I don't know what came over me, but I leaned in and timidly touched her cheek with my lips. Diana froze. For a moment I thought she was going to slap me, but instead she suddenly pulled me to her and returned the kiss. Her lips were unexpectedly soft and responsive. It was like an electric shock running through my body, a heaviness settling in my lower abdomen. A single thought pounded in my head. "What are we doing? This is insane!" But I no longer had the strength to stop. Diana moaned softly as my hands slid under her sweater. All reason retreated before the avalanche of desire that surged over me. Passion, the likes of which I hadn't felt in many years, coursed through my veins like a searing flame. At some point, the pile of clothes was tossed aside, and our naked bodies entwined in a single rush. It was so beautiful and at the same time so wrong that my head was spinning. All thoughts of Carol, of marital duty, evaporated as if they had never existed. There was only the call of the flesh, the unbridled thirst for possession. And judging by Diana's ardent reciprocal caresses, she felt the same way. I don't know how long it lasted. Time seemed to stand still. We lay pressed against each other, gazing up at the night sky. Our hearts were pounding as if they wanted to break out of our chests. Reality was gradually taking over, and euphoria was replaced by confusion and shame. What had we done? What now? But at the same time, I couldn't help but admit that for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. In the morning, we were awakened by voices and barking dogs. It was the search party sent by the resort administration. It turned out that Carol had contacted them by cell phone the night before and reported us missing. Luckily for Diana and me, she had slept soundly all night and had no idea what had happened. On the way back, Carol kept holding my hand and profusely thanking the rescuers. I responded absent-mindedly, immersed in painful reflections. Now, in the light of day, my nightly adventure with Diana seemed like something unreal, like a fevered dream. But one glance at my mother-in-law's flushed cheeks and shining eyes eloquently confirmed. It had all been real. At the hotel, Diana and I carefully avoided each other. Carol, suspecting nothing, chattered about how glad she was that everything had ended well. I, on the other hand, couldn't find peace. I desperately wanted to talk to Diana, to discuss everything, but I was afraid we might be seen together. If only Carol wouldn't guess anything. The next day we were already getting ready to leave. Carol was busily packing suitcases, humming some tune. She was clearly in a great mood, looking forward to going home. I was beside myself. I was torn by conflicting feelings. On the one hand, I was burning with shame and guilt for what I had done. On the other, I couldn't get the hot memories of that night out of my head. Diana also looked pensive and detached. At breakfast, she hardly talked to anyone, only occasionally casting long, meaningful glances at me. It sent shivers down my spine and made my heart pound like crazy. Could it be that the attraction between us hadn't disappeared? Having already loaded the luggage into the car, I made up my mind. Seizing the moment when Carol went to the room for the last bag, I approached Diana. We needed to dot all the I's before we parted ways. "Listen, what happened? Let's just forget about it, okay? As if it never happened," I mumbled, studiously looking away. "Forget?" Diana asked quietly and somewhat bitterly. "Is it possible to forget something like that? Tom, did you really feel nothing?" I froze as if struck by lightning. Her words seared me, forcing me to face the truth. Did I feel something? Oh, yes, I did. I suddenly realized with perfect clarity that I had fallen in love. Fallen in love with my own mother-in-law, a woman old enough to be my mother. It was insane, but also the most wonderful truth in my life. Diana must have read the answer in my eyes. With a sad smile, she ran her palm over my cheek and whispered, "I feel the same way, Tom. Have for a long time. Ever since your wedding with Carol, I've looked at you and realized that only with a man like you could I find happiness. You are my soulmate. But what do we do now?" My head was spinning. I didn't know what to do with this unexpected and overwhelming feeling. Diana sighed. "I don't know, Tom, but we can't give in to temptation. Family is sacred. Carol must never find out." It was hard to argue with that. Her own daughter would always come first for Diana, and I myself understood that we couldn't destroy my marriage with Carol. One mistake wasn't worth a whole life. But God, how I wanted to tell everything to go to hell and just hold Diana close. At that moment, Carol appeared from the hotel doors. Diana and I jumped apart as if scorched. Putting on polite smiles, we got into the car. Carol chattered about what a great time we had and made plans for future trips. I just nodded mechanically, while peering into the rearview mirror. Diana was sitting with her back turned to the window, crumpling a handkerchief in her hands. Could it be that she was crying? The whole way home I felt like everything inside me was twisting into a tight knot. I faced a difficult choice. Would I be able to suppress my feelings and live as before? To pretend to be a loving husband and obedient son-in-law? Or would I throw everything away and take a risk, put my family's well-being on the line for the sake of a crazy impulse of the heart? Several weeks passed after that fateful vacation. Life returned to its usual course, but for me, everything had changed irrevocably. I kept thinking about Diana, mentally returning to our single night together. Compared to her, my relationship with Carol seemed bland and mundane, like a lettuce leaf next to a spicy chili pepper. I realized that this couldn't go on. My feelings for Diana were eating me up inside, giving me no peace. I had to make a decision, once and for all, to talk to my mother-in-law frankly, to discuss our future together. Was it even possible? This future? One evening I made up my mind. Waiting until Carol left for yoga, I got in the car and drove to Diana's house. The whole way I kept turning over options for the upcoming conversation in my head. Confess my love? Suggest running away together? Or sensibly say goodbye and put this story out of my mind? Damn, I had never had such a hard time making a choice. Diana opened the door immediately, as if she had been waiting for me. She looked pale and haggard, shadows under her eyes. But when she saw me, her face lit up with such joy that it took my breath away. Could it be that I really meant that much to her? "Tom, what are you doing here?" she stammered, bewildered, letting me inside. Before I could change my mind, I blurted out, "Diana, I can't go on like this anymore. I can't pretend that nothing happened, that I don't love you. It's beyond my power." A stunned silence. For a few seconds, Diana stared at me as if she couldn't believe her ears, and then she threw herself on my neck, sobbing, "Tom, darling, I'm going crazy without you too. I thought I would die of longing. I need you, do you hear me?" I crushed her in an embrace, buried my face in her hair. God, how long I had waited for this moment. Her warmth, her tenderness, her closeness. Our lips merged in a greedy kiss, in which joy, relief, and passion mingled. The whole world ceased to exist. There was only us. But reality quickly reminded us of itself. Tearing ourselves apart with difficulty, we looked into each other's eyes, realizing the full horror of the situation. "What are we going to do, Tom?" Diana whispered. "We can't. You have a wife. I have a daughter." "To hell with everything," I interrupted. "Yes, it's selfish. Yes, we won't be understood and will be condemned. But don't we deserve a little bit of happiness? I love you, Diana, and I don't give a damn about the consequences." For a moment, a shadow of doubt flickered in her eyes. But then Diana nodded resolutely. "You're right. Come what may, but I choose you. I choose us. We'll figure something out. We'll manage." I hugged her so tightly that bones cracked. It doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter how Carol will take it. The only thing that really matters is our love. We found each other, two halves of one whole, and now we'll be together no matter what happens, against all odds. Of course, we have a difficult road ahead of us. Scandals, condemnation, rejection by society. But looking into Diana's shining eyes, I believe it's worth it. Our love is worth it, and we'll manage. We'll withstand any trials, because there's no other way, because we can't do it any other way anymore. We chose each other, once and for all. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.